introduce our special guest speaker tonight, Massey Campos. He's the founder of Self-Evident Ministry, which is an educational ministry that presents the founder's biblical view of law and government. He's got a motto on his website that reads, "Reaching this nation one soul at a time." And we know how that is. And so it's going to be good to hear from you, Massey, tonight, how you're doing that. It's also stated on his website that he is dedicated and burdened to educating Americans about the biblical heritage of our nation, of government, and preaching the gospel to all who will hear. That's wonderful. I can't wait to hear what you're going to say. Massey and his wife and their 3 sons live in Port St. Lucie, Florida, and we're very grateful that Hurricane Dorian turned north and didn't wipe out his town. Welcome to Texas, Massey. Come on up.
Hi. Hi. So I got to switch some of these things around. I didn't know they were going to do that. How is everyone? Rousing speeches, guys. That was crazy. I'm like back here going, crap, I wish we could have that in Florida. Because you get a lot of the promises, you know what I mean? A whole lot of promises, a whole lot of people saying the right things, and it just doesn't happen. I actually used to live in Minnesota, and then I got smart, and then I moved to Florida, and it was great. So yeah, this is the name of the ministry. It's called Self-Evident. Oh, you can't really see it. I'm very sorry about that. I didn't think it would do that. But anyways, here we are. Now, my name is Massey Campos. I am a 3rd-generation preacher, but I'm an American. I get tired of hearing Mexican-American, African-American. We are Americans of these United States, and I believe that had we united that way in the first place, you wouldn't have the divisions you have. I have a podcast called Self-Evident Podcast, and we travel a ton with it. I go all over the country preaching this kind of stuff, and I always tell my buddies, I say to them all the time, isn't it funny how they call people like myself a minority? But I'm an American. Aren't I the majority? I find it odd that being Hispanic has somehow made me a class. We're Americans here. Matter of fact, let me admit, Fern, it's a great example. Let's say you and I go to church together. You're obviously Caucasian. I'm obviously, most people think I'm Hawaiian. My wife thought I was Asian because I was chubby. And she goes, you should lose some weight. And I said, I don't want to do that because it keeps my wrinkles away. So I'm trying to maintain the youth. But Fern, imagine if you and I went to church together and you and I sat up and I said, hey, Fern, how are you? My name is Massey, I'm a Mexican Christian. And then you came up to me and you said, wait a minute, I'm a white Christian. Isn't that ridiculous? Are we brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ? That's what this is about. You're my brother and sister as an American. We abide under one thing called the Constitution. The power is in the people. Not even a document. It's in the people who uphold that document and understand that document. We're going to talk about that today. Again, here's the podcast. This is really, really odd, isn't it? Doesn't it look weird? Or am I just wrong here? It's really, really huge. I'm very, very sorry. There we go. Anyways. We're going to continue. So this is part of the podcast that it's just a 2-minute piece. Wow, that looks really crappy. Oh well. So here's just a piece of the podcast. I hope you guys enjoy it. There's a preacher and wife who are very, very poor. They already have 14 children. Now she finds out she's pregnant with their 15th. They're living tremendous poverty. Considering their poverty and the excessive world population, which some preach, would you recommend she get an abortion?
I remember the day that I found out that I was pregnant, and he threatened, he said, you're not having my baby, and I'm going to make sure of it.
The father is sick with the sniffles. The mother has tuberculosis. They have 4 children. The first child is blind. The second is deaf. The third child is deaf. The fourth has TB. She finds out she's pregnant again. Given the extreme situation, would you consider recommending an abortion?
Yeah, one thing led to another, and I'm pregnant, I'm getting an abortion, and you're paying for it.
A white man raped a 13-year-old black girl and she became pregnant. If you were her parents, would you consider recommending an abortion? Christ died for you. For you. For you. For you. For you. All of us.
And so when I went in there, I will never forget every single detail that happened. I can remember the room, I can remember the sounds, I can remember everything. But
a teenage girl is pregnant, she's not married. Her fiance is not the father of the baby, and he's very upset. Would you consider recommending an abortion?
You can drop it off and give it to God, and He will show you the way.
If you would have recommended an abortion in any of these situations, you should know that. In the first case where there was like 16 kids, you would have recommended killing John Wesley, one of the greatest evangelists and field preachers in the 18th century. In the second case, you would have killed Ludwig van Beethoven, one of the most famous musical composers of all time. In the third case, you would have recommended killing Ethel Waters, one of the nation's leading gospel singers. In the fourth case, you would have just recommended killing Jesus Christ.
Can God really heal someone that's been beaten and raped? Can He clean them up? And I say, yeah, you're looking at it.
I gotta quit showing this thing. I get teary-eyed every time I show it. It's funny because when I moved to Florida, actually, I gotta tell you the story real fast. We were actually supposed to come here in 2017 and we had to cancel. And here's why. We were on a 2-month tour in the summer and I packed the kids up in a trailer and said, sons, we're doing it. So we put all of our stuff in a rental property, or I'm sorry, a storage unit, and we hit the road, right? And we went up to Michigan first, then we went over to Minnesota because they need it too, right? They need the message of liberty and the gospel, obviously, right? And then so we started down south and we hit Kansas, and an 80 mile an hour gust of wind flipped our truck and trailer. We lost everything. It was pretty crazy. That was actually a picture. There it is. It was pretty insane. So I remember calling, my wife called here and said, hey, we're not going to be able to make it on Saturday. Sorry. Right? And so none of us got hurt, thank God, but we lost everything. We didn't have anything left to our name. And it's funny because that was the truck, and that was my side right there. And I wasn't even wearing my seatbelt because I just didn't. I was only going about 30 miles an hour because it was storming out. And this Kansas stuff's real, man. That's no joke. Wizard of Oz is right. Toto, man. Like straight up. It was crazy. And so, but the cool thing is God totally provided for us. And here we are 2 years later. Maybe it was a God thing. Maybe we're supposed to be here for this reason. And I want to say something too. When you guys watch the recent Democratic debates and all these things that were happening, how many times did you hear the word Constitution come up? Zero. Exactly. When you hear people running even for Congress or whatever, how many times does the word Constitution come up? I don't care, honestly, about President Trump's promises or Biden's promises. If it doesn't align with the Constitution, it's null and void to me. It doesn't make sense. And if we keep going away from this document that preserves American liberty, we're going to continue to lose this war. Right? We're going to talk about that today. Now, I'm the founder of all that stuff. And I'm also a pastor. Now I became the associate pastor of my church in Florida because I can't shut up and I love people, right? They need the gospel. And you know what's funny is once I stepped into being a pastor, I started to realize, holy smokes, we can empower pastors, man. They need to start preaching liberty from the pulpits. Straight up. So, we started a coalition in Florida now to get pastors elected to city official seats and all these things. So now we're working on that. Now, I would run for public office, but I am too darn busy and I have kids, and I neglected my kids for the first 5 years of their life because of ministry. And I committed the gravest sin I always thought I would never do in ministry. And I neglected them because of ministry. So I can't do that. But I am empowering other people and other patriots to do so. And maybe in 10 years when my kids grow up and they actually make something of themselves, because they will, then I can. We can go out and do something. We can take this over because we need to right now, right? There's no more time. And so I got saved when I was 21. I almost committed suicide. And I remember that in 2004, I was in a ministry. We were traveling into public schools and colleges. And I heard this phrase in 2004 and it bothered the snot out of me. You know what it was? Separation of church and... I had no clue what it meant. As a 23-year-old, I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about, separation of church and state? I didn't get scared. I got upset. I got upset. Here's why. Because the Bible tells me to go preach the gospel to every creature. It doesn't say go into all the world and preach the gospel except public schools. That bothered me. What are you talking about, separation? So then I prayed. I said, Lord, what does this mean? What is going on? I'm so sorry. So I prayed. I said, Lord, show me something. What are you talking about? So then I'm outside pumping gas one time. I was doing a fundraiser for a youth ministry, and it was fun. And I was pumping gas for this old lady. And I said, hey, we're doing a fundraiser for this youth ministry. Do you want to help donate? She said, absolutely. She had a bumper sticker on her car, and it said, Michael Perutka, President, 2004, God, Family, Republic. How many of you guys have ever heard of Michael Perutka before? Exactly. I was like, what? who's this? She goes, oh, that's Michael Perugia. He's running for president. I was like, of what? Because at that time, I was pretty liberal still, even as a Christian. And I thought only Democrats and Republicans existed. I only thought the two-party system. And so this guy was running under the Constitution Party. I got a hold of him, he flew to our office and taught a 12-week course in the Constitution. Changed my life. Now I became a preacher and a messenger of liberty. That's a dangerous combination, because guess what? Most of our founders were those men. Preachers and ministers of liberty. That's what they were. Samuel Adams, how do we know Samuel Adams today?
Beer.
Sinners. No, I'm kidding. No, that's true, right? Samuel Adams used to say from his own mouth, here's a good quote from him. He said, if you prefer wealth rather than liberty, and if you prefer tranquility over the animated contests of freedom, he said, go from us in peace. He said, we ask not your counsels or your arms. He said, crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your chains sit lightly upon you, and may our posterity forget that you were even our countrymen. You don't hear that on Sunday mornings, do you? This guy would ring this kind of stuff through the churches everywhere. These guys weren't stupid men. These were smart dudes. Patrick Henry, when he says, give me liberty or give me life, they're saying this on the tops of the steeples of the churches. They're going on the steps and saying this kind of stuff. Because liberty belongs spiritual first. Guys, listen to me. If God did not want liberty, He didn't need to remove the children of Israel from Egypt. He didn't need to lead them out of that. I love liberty, and guess what? My liberty now, it's not even about us anymore. Guess what? We got kids. A lot of us have grandkids. And I'm not sitting here telling you that you're not doing anything, but guess what? I'm tired of saying, we're not doing anything. Let's just get together and do it. I remember a lady yesterday, she told me from our church, she said to me, she said, I'm so sorry, Massey, our generation dropped the ball on you. And I looked at her and I gave her a big old hug and I said, ma'am, I don't care who dropped the ball. Let's pick it up together and run. Because we got a generation to save right now. Right now. My kids don't understand what I understood, and I didn't even understand it because my dad didn't know either. Guess what? My dad voted Democrat for 40 years of his life until he heard this message 10 years ago. Guess what? He's a conservative now. My dad. How many of you guys know it's harder to talk to family than anybody? Do you know how many times we got into an argument on the phone? You can't be preaching this on the pulpit, son. He called me a heretic twice. Seriously. There was a reason for that. I preached in his church one time, and I did do this. I said, if you're illegal in this room, you're lying before God. I didn't last 15 minutes, and he kicked me out. My brother will tell you, he kicked me out of the church. He's right there, it's my brother Faith back there. But to me, law is law. You can't get away from that. That's why it's not hard for me to stand on truth. And I know for some of us it's a little difficult because, hey, he's Hispanic, he can say these things. No, 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 no. You're an American, you can say these things. You can't be bothered by what people say. Amen? So, this is my wife. Wow, she's beautiful, man. Good. It's those eyes. Right? Betty Davis. Betty Davis eyes. She does all the coordinating. She's also a national speaker. And she gave birth to these three little fatheads, whom I love and adore deeply. This is Isaiah, Nathan, and Aaron. You know why we named them that? Because they're warriors in Christ. These guys can speak truth. This little guy here, we named him after a fallen Navy SEAL. And every time I tell them, like, if they get depressed or down, I was like, what does your name mean? What does your name mean? Who are you fighting for? We got blessed with little Aaron because we bought a dog from the family that we named their son after. Named our son after their son. His dog, we just got a puppy from. And so, like, he gets to be bonded with it. He understands American liberty comes at a cost. This is Daniel Webster. Doesn't he look happy? So he said this 150 years ago. This is Daniel Webster. If you guys don't know, this guy was an orator. He was a congressman. He was actually a statesman. His cousin was Noah Webster, where we get the Webster's Dictionary from. I've got two of them from 1828. You should get one. They're about 75 bucks. As a matter of fact, you can download the app right now on your phone. And you'll see a huge, drastic difference of what words meant then to now. Huge difference, right? Here's what he said. He said, hold on, my friends, to the what? Not political promises and campaigns. And hold on to the Constitution, he said. And to the Republic, miracles don't cluster. Listen to this. They were very scriptural about what they said. Miracles don't cluster. Isn't it true? Miracles don't happen every day. He said what has happened once in 6,000 years may not happen again. He said, hold on to the Constitution, for if the American Constitution should fail, there will be anarchy throughout the world.
True.
And you can see it now because we're doing things that are antithetical to the Constitution in foreign countries, and they're falling apart because of it.
Right.
We need people with that kind of principle to say, I don't care anymore what they're going to do to me. I'm going to stand on truth. And that's where we need to be. And that's why we do this, right? This is John Adams, second president. He's actually my favorite historical. We go way back. I'm kidding. So he said this, I have examined all religions, and the result is that the Bible is the best book in the world. I'm going to keep going through a lot of these quotes. When I do about 4 or 5 different topics, and actually about 7. I do one on the pursuit of happiness. What does it really mean, the pursuit of happiness? Did you guys know that it doesn't mean that you can pursue just what makes you happy? If you look at the founders' writings and why they wrote that, happiness actually is derived from William Blackstone when he said that happiness is derived from the great legislator of the universe as we abide in his laws. How come we don't teach kids that today? Is it any wonder that when we remove law, isn't it funny? We take away 10 commandments and enact 10,000 and kids still kill themselves. Laws don't change people. As a matter of fact, G.K. Chesterton said that. He said if man will not submit to God's 10 commandments, you'll eventually submit to man's 10,000. He said that. And I was just in Kent State in Ohio, because that's what I do normally is colleges and high schools, and I speak on these messages. And I was just at Kent State. One of the kids actually said to me, he said, wait a minute, man, I don't want to serve your God because that God's full of rules. I said, dude, have you read the IRS tax code? Like for real, bro. That 175,000 pages. Bible 66 books. Guess what? They repeat each other. Right? And you know, there's nothing about the Bible that's complicated. You know what's complicated about it? You have to die to yourself. You can't be selfish when it comes to Scripture. Matter of fact, Daniel Webster said, the Bible teaches me individual responsibility. Boy, we need some of that today. I'm sorry, guys, from the politicians, not just the kids. Right? I'm going to be blunt. This may offend you. I'm not trying to. But I just want you to hear my heart and why I'm saying this. Because truth is truth, regardless of who it's said and how it's said, okay? Both parties have allowed $23 trillion of debt. Both parties have allowed the slaughter of 60 million babies in the womb. Both parties have allowed our public school system to be overrun by a liberal agenda, and we're paying for it with our taxes. Both parties have allowed to come on the American people and tax them to death, right, to fund agendas that they don't even agree with. And as a matter of fact, if you read Jefferson's works, he said, to compel a man to furnish funds for ideas that he disbelieves and abhors them is sinful and tyrannical. How many things do we fund with our taxes that we know is sinful and tyrannical? Both parties did it. Do you know why the authorities laid in the people? Because it wasn't about a party. We need politicians that when we have people out there that don't know the Constitution, matter of fact, there's some people out there now that say, I'm only here to do the will of the people. True, but hear me out. If they don't know the Constitution, you're not supposed to go beyond the bounds of the Constitution just because they want you to. Politicians need to be as firm with the people as they are with them to say, I cannot do that, I'm not authorized to. And you don't want me to do that. Because when someone comes in that is not of your beliefs and they take on that power, isn't it happening today? Executive orders, all these things, right? Remember, it's only a tax. And it became a penalty. Think about this, guys. Free health care, and if you didn't get it, you had to pay a penalty. Free health care, and if you didn't get it, you had to pay free health care, and if you didn't buy it, you paid a penalty. That's how backwards it's become, right? But I'm going to continue here. Well, I talk a lot about religion and politics because guess what? There's 2 topics they never want you to talk about. And guess what 2 topics we don't know how to talk about today? We didn't practice it. We don't know how to talk about it. I can promise you. Right? Why? Because we're frustrated. A lot of us are frustrated, especially, come on, man, right? We're looking at the news, and sometimes you know you don't want to turn on MSNBC, but you just do because you want to get mad for the night, right? So you turn it on, so you can throw your shoe at it and get upset. Come on, guys, let's go. Huh? Come on, you women, too. I'm not leaving you out yet. I'll get to another point with you, right? And we're mad because current events and what's happening today, I don't even like talking about current events, and here's the reason. Because they're starting off on the wrong footing. The fact that Hillary Clinton could say that babies don't have constitutional rights, first time I ever agreed with her. First time. Because babies have a God-given right to live, not a constitutional one. The Constitution is a human right, not a right? Right? If we lose that narrative, If we lose the narrative that rights come from God, we will lose this war because rights come from Him. And if it comes from Him, then our politicians have an accountability to Him. If they're accountable to you, look what happens with our presidents.
Right.
Amen. Yeah. It's true. Listen, I as a minister of God, as a preacher of the Lord, as a pastor, I'm held in double damnation for what I preach and withhold from the people that is not truth. But I'm also held in double honor if I do. See? How much more the politicians? As a matter of fact, read Romans 13. We'll talk about that in a minute, because I don't want to get ahead of myself. Right? There's no fixed standard in which to conduct a conversation with religion and politics anymore. Because people just want to talk about, well, I think healthcare should be a right. Hey, did you guys know that guns are a right? It's in the Second Amendment, isn't it? Yeah. So the government should be handing out AR-15s like crazy, yo! You know, I got a First Amendment right to practice my religion freely, correct? Yeah. And y'all should be paying for my church building. Hello! No! I have a right to pursue these things. Listen to me, guys. I don't believe the Second Amendment protects the first. I believe the first protects the second. Listen to me. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibit its free exercise. Religion was so important to the founders, it was the first thing they wrote to be protected. Rights come from Him. If we understand that, the Second Amendment makes so much sense. God gives me the right to protect myself. I can't use that to protect a right if it's not in the heart of the people, because all they're going to do is rebel. That's why you see so many factions growing right now. It has to be the Lord first. So I'm going to continue with this. This here is John Adams. He said this. He said the second day. See, this is hard because I can't read it from here. I'm going to move this for a second, okay? I've got a ton of quotes. Maybe I won't. Can he do it? Can he do it? Dang it! Thank you, sir. Chris, everybody give Chris a hand. Yeah, we're going to learn something tonight, okay? I love teaching. This is John Adams. He said this, the second day of July 1776. Listen to me, the second day was independence. Yes, I know that. I posted on the 4th of July and I got so many messages. You're a constitutionalist, huh? It was actually on the 2nd. I know. It's federally recognized as the 4th, okay? Jeepers, you know, you ever get those kind of people in your life, right? It says, will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America. He said, I'm apt to believe that there will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. Listen close. He said, it ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. Listen to this. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade and with shows and games and sports and guns and fireworks and all that stuff too. But he said it should be honored as a day that we got delivered by the hand of God. Amen. Why aren't we teaching kids that? It's their words, not mine. Guys, when I started to find this out, light bulb went off. See, okay, so I'm a preacher and I've been evangelizing for a long time. I never went into churches. Because to me, it's like a Christian doing ministry in a church. Doesn't make sense to me. So the first 3 years of this ministry, we're going into colleges, we're going into public schools, yes, public schools, not all of them obviously, but we did a ton of them. And it's awesome. I was in Michigan on Constitution Day. This is awesome. I love this story. So we went to Michigan, the lady said, okay, you're going to talk about, she goes, but I heard you're Christian, can I see your slides? I said, absolutely. So it was almost something similar to this. It was about the Constitution, but I talked about the Lord and the Bible and all these things, right? And she said, I reserve the right to remove you from this school if I feel you're crossing the line. Because somehow she was made the czar of the school, right? And I looked at her and I said, totally cool, but you'll find everything I'm saying is factually accurate. Okay? Just so that she goes, you have 53 minutes. By 53 minutes, I have it all on video actually, she was the first one to come up to me and give me a hug, and she invited me back 2 more years to talk about the Constitution in a public school. That day, kids were skipping classes because they wanted to do 2 more hours of this stuff, because they're not taught it. I wish I was taught this stuff. Then I would have something to stand for. But I didn't know. And now I'm 38. 38. No offense, right? I know some of you are, young pup, right? Folks, I realize when I wake up in the morning now, there's stuff that hurts I didn't know existed, okay? Like my back and stuff. It's like, man, I got muscles there? What happened, right? I'm going to continue. Now, this is the Washington Monument. I'm just going to go through these things really fast. I want to build a premise, okay? If you've ever been there, this is actually from the bottom up, holiness to the Lord. Actually found in Exodus 28. Search the scriptures, it's almost about a quarter up. This is all inscribed inside the Washington Monument. The memory of the just is blessed. Notice the trend here. It's not from an atheistic book, correct? It's from the Word. May heaven to this union continue its beneficence. In God we trust, obviously, right? And this is on the capstone. Praise be to God. It's actually in Latin. Do you guys know that? That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Why wasn't I taught that in school? Why? Why hide it? You know why? Because when you can remove responsibility from the people to God, then they can rule you. It's exactly what happened. And now we have liberal agendas everywhere right now, and that's what we're trying to stop. And I'm actually going to call, so from the beginning, there it is. From the beginning, from 1776 and on, right, we believe in these three basic tenets, the American view of law and government. I want you guys to repeat this with me, okay? Number one, there is a God. Our rights come from Him. And the purpose of government is to secure those God-given rights. Now we're going to do an exercise. Where do you guys think that comes from? Why do you think they believe that? Where does that come from? Can anybody tell me? This is worse than high schoolers. Come on. The Bible. Yes, I can find every scripture to justify it, but you're wrong. Ding, 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 you're wrong. Right? Anyone else? The Declaration of Independence says these three phrases. And our kids, I didn't even know this until I was 25. I didn't even know. Check this out. This is crazy. In 1607, I'm actually doing a new class now. From 1607 to 1776, we're going to talk about the foundation of that declaration. Why we even have a constitution, right? This was the Virginia Charters. It's now known, it's Jamestown, now known as Virginia. Check this out. We greatly commending and graciously accepting of their desires for the furtherance of so noble the work, which may by the providence of Almighty God hereafter tend to the glory of God in the propagating of the Christian religion. Why did they come here in 1607? What did they come to do? Let's continue, right? I got tons of this stuff, tons, but I didn't do it here because I don't know how much time I have, and I'm going to try to go as quick as I can. Are you guys learning something so far? Praise God. Here we go. Pilgrims in 1620. This is Plymouth, Massachusetts. Guys, have you guys ever been to Plymouth? And seen the Plymouth Rock? It is literally a rock. Nothing fancy, man. I was like thinking, I preached this stuff, man. I went up there last year, and I'm thinking, man, here it is, the rock. It's here, right? Praise God. This is the Mayflower Compact. This is what it says. It says, in the name of God, amen. We whose subjects are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord, King James, by the grace of God, of England and France and Ireland, King, defender of the faith, and having undertaken for the glory of God and the advancement of the... Yeah, this is William Bradford, the second governor of Plymouth. He said this: the colonists cherished a great hope, an inward zeal of laying the good foundations for the propagations and advance of the gospel of the kingdom of God. Right? They came here to do that. This is the fundamental orders of Connecticut. Do you guys know that this was the first constitution written on these lands in 1639? This entire constitution was written from a sermon by Reverend Thomas Hooker. And you know what that sermon was titled? The foundation of the authority is laid in the free consent of the people. We need to preach that, man. Yeah. You only have the authority that I allow you to have. Guys, can I be blunt? I've already been blunt, but I'm going to keep being blunt, right? You know what scares me about elections? We think that one person is going to change it. Look at the Democrats. Oh, if we elect her, she's going to revolutionize everything. Isn't that scary? Guys, we don't have a monarchy in this country. Thank God. We have a republic. You're the authority, not them. Amen. Man, we need to keep preaching that. That's why it scared me too when President Trump got elected. Not that he got elected. I pray for this dude. I think he's doing some awesome stuff. But you know what's scary is when the people are like, Trump all the way, baby. He's changing everything in this country. That's scary to me. Because when someone gets in there that we don't agree with, what are they going to do with that power? Exactly. We saw it the last 8 years. Look what happened. Now Trump is doing the very thing that he knows to do with his lawyers. They're just following a trend. I am totally for him. 100%. I want his people around him to be constitutionally sound too, though. Amen? Because I want us to be free. I want my kids to be free. You know that whole thing with taxed enough already? I think we're taxed enough already, don't you think? Yeah. Right? Now, check this out. The 14th Amendment literally destroyed our Constitution. It took away the state sovereignty and gave it to the federal government, basically, right? But let me ask you this. If something got amended, can it be unamended? I need to be talking about that. We've been talking about that. Prohibition, remember? If it can be amended, it can be unamended. You guys should do a homework study on the 14th Amendment. Literally upended states' rights. And put the sovereignty in the hands of a court system. That's why you're seeing all this stuff happen today. We're going to talk about the authority of the court in a second. Watch this. I'm not going to go through all this because this is the Portsmouth Compact of 1638 says is we submit our persons, lives, and estates unto the Lord Jesus Christ, the King of kings, the Lords of all the earth, and to all those perfect and absolute laws given to us in His holy word. Now, this is where colleges, I love colleges. Do you guys know that colleges are the only place in this country you have to pay $250,000 to be more stupid? Seriously. Seriously. We pay our kids to go to these places, and it teaches them how to not be responsible anymore. And there's an agenda going on for their hearts all the time. That's why we got to pray for them. That's why I love, guys, we have an invitation, God willing, I'm hoping that it goes through to go to Berkeley with this message. I love liberty. I love liberty, dude. But if we don't found that liberty on God, we're losing this battle. Liberty comes from Him. It doesn't come from a man or papers. We're going to read about that in a second. That's why it's so important. I love, guys, I subscribe to Ben Shapiro's podcast. I love everything about Steven Crowder. I love these guys, right? But if all we're doing is talking about liberty and not where it comes from, we're done. We have to talk about where it comes from and why it's so important. That's what empowers the church, man. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Dude, I'm praying for this day, right? That President Trump would say this. We're going to undo unconstitutional things like we're going to take health care and give it back to the people. You know what would happen in our churches? The same thing that's happening right now in Florida with the Bahamas. We would get together. We would band with each other. You wouldn't see people going to church saying, man, this is boring. They would get active and do. I believe a lot of people leave because the duty of the church is being taken care of by a government. Think about this. Think about this for a minute. Jesus Christ went to Pontius Pilate right just before He died. Because Pilate said, don't you know I have the authority to take your life? And He said, you have no authority except that which my Father giveth you. It's a pretty bold thing to say to a governor of a country, correct? Now listen to this. He didn't tell Pontius Pilate, by the way, when I die, would you make sure that you feed the poor? Maybe heal the sick a little bit? Who did He give those commands to? Darn right. Can you imagine if they took away welfare from the government and said, churches, synagogues, we need you now. It's going to be hard at first, but I promise you God will provide. I promise you God will do His work. And you know why? Have you guys ever read Hebrews 11? Be honest with me. Just raise your hands. Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11. Through faith, listen to this. I believe in this God still because He will vindicate His name. And I'm going to tell you stories as to why. What He's done through our ministry, but to other men and other women. Right? He said this. Through faith, they subdued nations. They stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the fiery darts of the enemy. These men and women stood up in the face of kings, you guys. God turned Pharaoh's heart 10 times, and Moses still stood, and he won. Do you ever notice this in Scripture, guys? Listen to me. How many of you guys actually read Scripture? Okay, listen to me. Where, in one story in the Bible, do you read that God uses a majority to win His battles? It's always a minority. That's why Samuel Adams' quote on the back of your t-shirts makes so much sense to me. It doesn't take a majority to prevail. Rather, an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. That's what it takes. And God will use the few. You know why? So He can get the glory, because He's good at it. He's good at it. Amen? So, all of a sudden now we get to 1774 after learning that from 1607 to 1774 we actually had a Christian foundation. Now, let me be honest here. This is what I don't like a lot about historians who are Christian. They put the founders on a pedestal. They were flawed dudes, man. They were flawed. Slavery happened. Right? It was flawed. Matter of fact, I was just preaching at my church this message on July 7th. I had 2 black couples come up to me and they said, you didn't address the issue of slavery. I said, yeah, come on October 12th. We're doing a conference about it, and I'll talk about it there. Right? But here's what I said. So you think that slavery is a national sin. I agree with you. As a matter of fact, in the Scriptures, if you read the Old Testament, man-stealing was punishable by death. It should have never been legal. Right? But I looked at them and I said, I can't control what happened 240 years ago. You're right. But what are your kids going to say about you in 100 years? What national sins exist today that you're not willing to stand against? That are happening, that are abominations in this country. So, I can get mad about the past, but they were flawed men, flawed women. They were just like you and me. Guess what? God did some pretty cool things through them, though. That's what I have hope in. He can use a flawed, chubby Mexican kid from Sleepyhead, Minnesota to do something, man. I love this stuff. Dude, I look at speakers today that are national. They got the nice teeth, you know, and chiseled jaw, and they got their suits on. Like, who's the guy that just spoke? Where's he at? Did he leave? Where's he at? Where's he at? Oh, he's out in the hallway. Dude, he looks fantastic. I mean, he's good. I love him. I love you. Dude, you got me lit up. I was like, girl, shoot, I'll campaign for you. I'll fly down here to campaign for you. I promise you I will. I will too. Right? I love that stuff. But it's like, you know what's so funny is that, like, God will use those people, and that's cool. But I almost wonder sometimes if He uses the people who don't look the part because they only have the power of God to rest in.
Amen.
What if it's you? What if it's you? What if you that say, I can't do it? I can't do it. Are you crazy, Lord? What did Elijah do? He was hiding in the wine press, and God said, stand up, mighty man of valor, as he was hiding. Look, dude, I'm not telling you I got it all figured out. I just know this. I was lied to for 25 years of my life, and I'm tired of it. And these kids are being lied to every day. So guess what? I committed my life to the gospel of Christ and to preach liberty to these kids because I don't know when Jesus is coming back. I don't. But if He doesn't come back in the next 100 years, God forbid my sons never say of me that I didn't stand for them.
Amen. Amen.
That's the heart to put into you. God forbid that they never say of us that we didn't take a stand, that we weren't willing to fight, that we didn't stand for the cause of liberty. Because guess what? It's going to take time. Or God can be so gracious and change it in a second. I believe He did it through this last election. I really do. He stayed His hand. Praise God. I really do. But with that, I'm going to be honest with you, with that, there's a great responsibility for that. I don't put my trust in chariots or horses. The Bible says in Exodus, some men put their trust in chariots and horses. My trust is in the name of the living God. He's a man too. He can fail. It's us, you guys. Amen? Let's continue. This is Reverend Jacob Duché. In 1774, they got together to do and form a Congress. How are we going to free ourselves from these tyrants? Right? And then they get together with this cat. You know what happened when he showed up? A 2.5-hour prayer service. Why aren't kids taught that today? 2.5 hours. And then they read Psalm 35. This is what John Adams, this is part of the prayer. It says, O Lord, our heavenly Father, high and mighty, King of kings and Lord of lords, who does from your throne behold all the dwellers of the earth, and reigns with power supreme, uncontrolled over all the kingdoms and empires and governments. Look down in mercy, we ask you, we beg you, on these American states who have fled to you from the rod of the oppressor. Dude, I want to get on my knees right now. Lord, we're calling out to you, man, because we in our strength can't change this. This is crazy what's happening right now. That's why I admire courage. Man, men don't follow titles, they follow courage. You keep standing. They follow courage. You keep standing. Amen? There's a lot in that for you, right? I'm not going to go through it all, but this is what John Adams said. He wrote to his wife, he said, I never saw a greater effect upon an audience. It's as if heaven ordained that psalm to be read that morning. He said, Reverend Duché broke out an exemplary prayer, which means it just flowed out of him. It says, which filled every man present. He prayed with such earnestness and fervor, such ardor, such pathos, in language so sublime. He said he had it read to her father and the kids. And did you guys know that from 1774 to 1816, we had over 1,400, states included, 1,400 government-issued days of prayer and fasting for this nation? Wow. 1,400. Folks, look at me. I have a hard time fasting too. I get it. Right? But I do fast for this country. I do pray for this nation. Because guess what? There's never been anything like it. Never. And I don't want it to stop until Jesus comes back. I don't. Right? Let's continue. This is Abigail Adams. You guys, I love it when feminists say to me, dude, I was just talking about you. You're awesome. It's funny, because when I preach, I say dude and bro and all these things, and I'm like, I'm so used to kids. And so I'm in these crowds, and I'm like, I wonder if they think I'm like an idiot. Like I said. Anyways, Abigail Adams, you know how feminists say today, they were unappreciated, women were unappreciated? Okay, this is what Abigail Adams said about Alexander Hamilton. She said, a patriot without religion, in my estimation, is as great a paradox as an honest man without the fear of God. Yeah, how many of you guys know women like that, men? Wives? Yeah? Yeah? Happy wife, happy life, happy husband, no one cares, right? What about our state constitutions, though? This is the Texas State Constitution. It's your preamble, guys, right? Every state I go to, I start pulling up their preambles because I want the people to know, look what your state invokes. Do you know why I believe this nation is protected? Because we made an oath to God. Look at this. Humbly invoking the blessings of who? Almighty God. The people of the state of Texas do ordain and establish this Constitution. We need God because He creates law and government. Let's continue. I'm not going to go through all this. In the Declaration, it talks about the laws of nature. Nature's God. Every time I go to a college, every time, I always get this one question. What God were they talking about? Well, they're not talking about the spaghetti God or the one of the light bulb. They're talking about someone. And guess what? The Mohammedan religion, which we now know as the Muslim religion, existed. Buddhism existed. They could have easily written those names, but they didn't. They wrote Almighty God. Let's continue. Samuel Adams said this. He said, the 4th of July, we have this day restored the sovereign to whom all men ought to be obedient. He reigns in the heaven from the rising and the setting of the sun. Let His kingdom come. This is what they used to preach. Listen to this. He said, in the supposed state of nature, all men are equally bound by the laws of nature, or to speak more properly, the laws of the Creator. Let's continue. What is the purpose of government? Remember those 3 things? There is a God, our rights come from Him. The purpose of government. We hold these truths to be what? You guys know what that word self-evident in kid terms means? Duh. We hold these truths to be duh. All men are created equal. To them it was not even a debate that God existed. You know, I was once a liberal turned conservative. Forgive me for this, went libertarian. Came back to conservatism. Here's the reason, because I found out the Libertarian Party wasn't just, and I love libertarians. I have many friends who are. But some of them that represent the Libertarian Party started saying this, that the self-evident truth was that we have rights. The self-evident truth is that God gives rights. See, we lose that. We got to keep that narrative up, you guys. It says we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are what? Created. You want to know how to end the abortion argument? All men are created, not born or evolved. So to the founders, this was very poignant to them. Thomas Jefferson told Benjamin Franklin each word was specifically chosen, precisely chosen for this reason. Listen, they're created equal. So to them, where does life begin? Creation, conception, yes. Right. Isn't it funny that little amoebas on Mars are life? And they call this little thing, you know how they say it's a fetus? Do they even know? Do you know what the word fetus in Latin means little one? They tell on themselves, dude. Like seriously, when I listen to the Democratic debates, I just let them talk. You don't even need to defend yourself. It's so crazy. I mean, isn't it true? You don't even need to make fun of them, because I don't like making fun of people who don't agree with me. I don't think that's right. They can do a great job on their own. I don't need to do that. They talk themselves. It says this, that they're created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain what? That among these are what? Life, liberty, property, right? They should have stuck with it. But the word life, think about this, right? If God gives life, can man dictate when it begins? Why are we even debating it? Right. That's why the Supreme Court is so dangerous. That's why it's so dangerous. Check this out. I'm going to make this statement. I don't make it often, but I'm just going to say it here because I think you guys understand where I'm coming from. If government can tell you when life begins, you know where I'm going. Dude, we think that that's far-fetched. 70 years ago, we fought a tyrant that did. 70 years ago. I'm sorry, even more sooner than that. Folks, we were in the Desert Storms and all these wars, Cold Wars, all these things. Guys, we were fighting tyrants. It's not a far-fetched idea. As a matter of fact, what civilization hasn't ended with that? What makes us think that we're going to get this right? That's why I love that. That just, socialism hasn't been practiced correctly. Oh, it has. It just doesn't work, right? So let's continue. I'm not going to go through all that because I don't have that much time. This is John Adams. He said, the Declaration of Independence laid the cornerstone of human government upon the first precepts of what? Guys, you guys got to stand on this, man. When I started finding this stuff out, it gave me courage. Then I started preaching even harder, even louder. It made me want to go to colleges and high schools and those places that said we couldn't go. Tell a kid not to do something, the more he wants to what? You should take on the same attitude. We all know that with kids, right? Our kids. Tell them not to do it, they want to do it. I tell my kids, don't take out the garbage. It doesn't work. They don't take out the garbage, right? When I found out that John Adams' oldest son was like 14 and he was doing U.S. government work overseas, that tripped me out, man. I was wet in the bed when I was 12. I'm not ashamed to say it. This guy 14 years old doing U.S. government work overseas, for crying out loud. John Adams was 15, 16 years old when he graduated the bar to practice law. Some of us have a hard time reading books. True? Amen? Come on. Hey, I'm with you. I'm with you. Right? Hey, by the way, don't take pictures. If you guys want the slides, let me know. I'll send them to you, okay? There's no copyrights on this stuff. It's not my words, it's theirs. Right? The pursuit of happiness, real fast. This is what I was talking about when William Blackstone talked about the pursuit of happiness. So William Blackstone wrote a 4-volume work from 1765 to 69. And our founders used these works in court cases all over the country, and it established a lot of what our Declaration said. He said the Creator has so intimately connected and so inseparably woven the laws of eternal justice with the happiness of each individual. In other words, I can't be happy if I'm not in obedience to God's law. Kids need to be taught that today. Let's continue. I'm not going to go through all this. This is G-Dub, my guy, George Washington. He said this, of all the dispositions and habits, did you guys know that it was mandatory here in this state, actually here in Dallas up until 1956, I believe it was, to have Bible courses in public schools here? Not too far gone. Do you know that? Crazy, huh? Do you know that it was mandatory in public schools to read Washington's farewell address? Listen to this. Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. Listen to this, though. Can you imagine if a president, our president said this today? He said, in vain would that man claim tribute to be a patriot if he labors to subvert this. You can't even call yourself an American, he said, if you try to subvert religion and morality. Can you imagine? He said it. Right? They believed in it. This is Massachusetts Constitution of 1780. Listen to this. I preach there a month a year. In July, I go there for a month and I preach everywhere there. Yeah, they're turning, guys. Don't believe the media. It's awesome. It's awesome, dude, to see things happen in churches down there, in the schools. Dude, I had a Catholic priest ask me to come to his church and preach on liberty. That is unheard of. He goes, I have some homosexuals here. Are you okay with it? I love them too. They need Jesus, man. Get them in the doors. Of course they're going to, come as you are, leave as you're changed, right? I get that. But I love them. I got 2 cousins that are. I love those people. They need the gospel too. How many of us have told a lie before? What's the difference between you and a homosexual? Sin? You need the gospel too. I love you too. As a matter of fact, everybody just needs a hug. We're in this together. They need Jesus, right? I'm not afraid of that. Dude, I love going to gay pride parades, handing out gospel tracts. They're amazingly crazy. Not because of the people, but because of how they react. You get some nice ones. Sometimes you get some vitriol and spit at and stuff. Been to 3 or 4 of them, handing out tracts and ministering and witnessing and stuff. But that's where they're at, aren't they? They're not coming to our church. It'd be just like a robber showing up at the police station saying, I'm busted. Right? They're not coming to our church. We got to go to them, right? We need to do that, guys. Listen, you want to get this conservative message out there? Go to them. Go to them. And they'll come if you care. They need to see you love them. And they'll listen, man. My brother's proof. My dad's proof. Love them. They'll come. It's pretty cool. And guys, I started pastoring our young adults at church. Right now, we go out and do apologetics courses once a month. They're talking about liberty and freedom. I talk about a major topic going on in our country once a month. They're going out once a week to the Planned Parenthoods, not protesting, praying with women, and they've seen women stop their abortions. They're active, guys. We're going out every other weekend witnessing and ministering. You know why? Because that's important. Now that's what's changing our country. That's changing our state. Hello. You guys will understand. That's what's changing our nation right now. It's not just me talking about this, it's teaching others to do the same. Because once that happens, you can teach other people to do the same. I love when people tell me all the time, they say, man, you're preaching to the choir, bro. Well, then get out of rehearsal and start singing, bro. Come on. Come on, we can do this. Right? This is the Massachusetts Constitution of 1780. It says this, listen, the happiness of a people and the good order and preservation of civil government essentially depend upon piety, religion, and morality. That's their constitution. Oh yeah, when I show pastors that, they freak out. Wait a minute, what? I said, no, it gets better. Listen to this. It says this. These cannot be generally diffused from community by the institution of the public worship of God. Their constitution is literally telling them, go build churches. Try that. Texas, you don't need to be told, you just do it. I love Texas, man. Right? Check this out. Northwest Ordinance of 1787, I'm almost done. You know what it means when a preacher says he's almost done? Nothing. Well, I'm almost done. Article 3 of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 says this: religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. Where were they supposed to teach this? Schools. Did you guys know that Michigan adopted this in one of their amendments? Yeah.
Did they know it?
Exactly. Yes. I know. Isn't that the hard question? You know what it does take, ma'am? It takes me to show them. It takes you to show them. When I started reading scripture for myself, when I started understanding American liberty and I started to read it for myself, guess what happened? I wanted to tell everybody. Because I got deceived in this. Do you know why this was happening? Not because of people's inaction, because we didn't know. It's funny, Hosea 4:6, the Bible says, my people are destroyed because they lack knowledge. Listen to that. It doesn't say because they lack money or power. They lack knowledge. We need that. Arm the people, Madison said, with the knowledge, and they'll win. Right? Let's continue. This is John Adams. You all know this quote. It says, our Constitution was made only for moral and religious people. It can't exist in the government of any other. Because man, he said it actually just before, the gentleman that was just, what was his name? That guy. He said before, he said, we don't need more laws to change people's hearts. It's morality inside. The 10 Commandments are clear. Don't murder. And that's why you see what's happening today, because we remove the firm basis and conviction. This is Benjamin Franklin. So those of you that think he was not a Christian, in his early life he wasn't. He didn't ascribe to the things of God, neither did Thomas Jefferson, until they got older, and I have proof of that. Okay? It says this freedom is not a gift bestowed to us by other men. It's a right that belongs to us by the laws of God and nature. This is John Dickinson. Listen to this. He said, kings or parliaments could not give rights essential to happiness. We claim them from a higher source, from the King of Kings and the Lord of all the earth. They're not given to us by parchments or seals. He said they're created in us by the decrees of Providence. They're created in us by God. That's why I fight for them. Guys, would you fight for your kids? Why? Because God gave them to you, huh? Because mamas, you birthed those kids. Right? Husbands, you were there too. You provide for them, right? You give them stuff. You would fight and die for your kids, and I know you would, because that's why you're here, right? Why can't we fight for rights the same way? They're given to us by Almighty God, and no man can take it. Listen to this quote. Listen to this, we're almost finished with it. It says, they're created in us by the decrees of Providence, which establishes the laws of our nature. They are born with us, exist with us, and cannot be taken from us by any human power without taking our lives. Amen. Those were the things said back in the day. Let's continue. This is John Adams again. He said this: you have rights given to you before all earthly governments, rights that cannot be repealed or restrained by human laws, rights derived from the great legislator of the universe. Guys, this is so real to me. This is why I wish the amendments, when it said Congress shall make no law, don't you wish they'd have stopped there? We'd be done. We wouldn't be talking right now. That was a blanket statement to all 10 amendments. Congress shall make no law when it comes to privacy, guns, religion, press, speech, these things. Here's why it's important to have morality. Because rights have responsibility. So the Bible says, Paul said, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are expedient. In other words, I can do all things, but it ain't good for me, right? Like Snickers, I can eat them, ain't good for me. That's what he was saying, right? Now, in Ephesians, it talks about that I'm not supposed to use my tongue with divisive speech. I can say what I want, but I have a responsibility before God to make sure my tongue is maintained. Read the book of James. See what I mean? That's why morality in the gospel is so important when it comes to our rights. Because you won't use a gun for the offense. You'll only use it to protect yourself. See what I mean? That's why, see? I wish more pastors were here. Because I'd be telling them right now, do you understand why it's here? You have to activate your people? to preach the gospel? Because this doesn't make sense, like John Adams said, in any other way. Our rights are important. They mean something to me. Guys, listen. I'm only 38, okay? I know, I'm young. I know. I've been promised 80 years with strength, the Bible says, I hope, right? I got 40 years of my life to live. I don't know about you, that's not a lot of time. Most of you guys could sit and say, man, holy smokes, when my kid graduated high school, it was like a vapor, true? My kid now, he's about to turn 11. 11, he was just born last week. You know, like, he's about to turn 11. And I'm thinking to myself, I've got 4 more good years in this kid before he starts telling me, I'm okay, Dad, I don't need to learn no more. True? 15, 16, I know, it's coming. What I do with him now is going to echo forever for him. That's why the rest of the time that you and I have, and folks, if you're old in here, if you think you're old, Moses was 80 when his ministry started, so don't even try to ask me. You got a lot of tread on your tires left, don't you worry. But what I really want you to focus on tonight is, because I'm not going to go through all this, because I don't have that much time, and I know that.
You've said that 4 times.
Thank you and good night. And here I was going to give you a free shirt. Not no more! I really mean this. I am. Almost done. But I get on that trail, and look, what I'm saying to you is I hope that it inspires you to do something beyond yourself. Beyond yourself. If you think you can't go into it, like how many of us have a burden that you know is impossible to do? Come on. Then you're called to do it. Because if it was possible, it wouldn't be the Lord. I promise you that. Who would have thought we'd be going into public schools and colleges? Who would have thought that? With the message of the gospel, dudes. That's God. Only God can do that. Seriously. Only God. I didn't even think of that. To me, I didn't even understand you couldn't do it. They needed it. Okay, cool. I'm almost done. Okay. I promise you, I'm almost done. Because I've already done all this, right? It's my last 3 slides. Thomas Paine once said, if there be trouble, let it be in my day so that my child may have peace. A guy could preach a sermon on that quote. If there's trouble, I want it to be me so that my kids can be free. Amen? Amen. Carry that in your heart. Burn it on your heart. Pray about that. Live for that. Because your kids deserve more than this. Our country gave them that opportunity. Amen? What's our duty? I just remember, did you guys know, you guys ever heard the story of William Wilberforce? What can one man do? Yeah. I love, dude, there's an anointing on your life. You, ma'am. I forget your name, but there's just an anointing. Beth, sorry, I'm a guy, forget names. Well, listen to this, William Wilberforce. You guys have heard of him before? He eradicated slavery in England, we all know the story. Did you guys know that he only stood 5'3" in height? 5'3", little guy, right? And did you know he was so health-ridden, he wore a metal girdle to uphold himself because he was so riddled in pain. When he first had his religious conversion, he was going to quit. Many of you guys know John Newton said, don't do that. He was the guy that wrote Amazing Grace. He said, no, use your God-given talents in Parliament. So he did. First bill he introduced to eradicate slavery, defeated by everybody. Nobody was for it. 20 years later, he enacts Thomas Buxton. He's like, hey, I need your help, man. My health is failing. But they started to turn 20 years in, right? How many of us would have quit at year 5? Year 20. This is a burden from the word of the Lord for him. Right? Year 33, they eradicated slavery in just certain colonies. But he wasn't done yet. 44 years of fighting. They sent a runner to his house when they took the last boat. They did it, sir. Slavery's done in England. 3 days later, he died. God gave him the victory. He saw it with his eyes. God is so good to him that he was able to see his victory. what can he do with you, man? He stopped slavery. An international trade was stopped. You think abortion can't stop? Public schools can't turn for the name of God? You think a Congress or people that are lying through the media, God couldn't shut up with his own throne? When David prayed, he said, Lord, break the teeth of those who spread lies against your name. Stop them, Lord. I believe that God. And there's examples. You guys ever heard of John Knox? In the 1450s, he stood before Mary, Queen of Scots. You know what Mary, Queen of Scots said of him? I fear that man's prayers more than all the assembled armies of Europe. That's a Christian. That's a man of the Lord. No, that's a patriot. That's a patriot. We can do this together, guys. That's all I want to leave you with. All this stuff that I told you, maybe might have been nothing new, but this is new, that you can. We don't need more meetings, man. We need to do. We need to be active. We need to be active because the schools are yours. You pay for them. This is yours now. John Adams said, posterity, you'll never know what it costs this present generation to preserve your freedom. He said, I hope you make good use of it, because if you don't, I'll repent in heaven that I took half the pains to preserve it. That will change you. That'll change you. Did you guys learn something today?
Yeah.
Father, I thank you for these people. Lord, I got nothing else to give except your blessing. Lord, I thank you that you move in their hearts. Not just to know, but to do. Because I'm still like that, Lord, looking for the next. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Lord, I thank you put in our hearts. You put in our hearts, Lord, the burden of the word of the Lord. And you give these people the courage, Lord, to stand and fight. Because it's worth it. Because it's worth it, Lord. Our kids are worth it. And the future generations coming are worth it. Father, I pray you bless this meeting and the new name. The new era right now, Father, the movement of the word of the Lord. Father, I think it goes from state to state. It's not just true Texas, it's true Florida. It's true Massachusetts, it's true Minnesota. There's vision here, guys. This is good. Amen. I thank you, bless it, Father, in Jesus' name. You guys are freaking awesome.
Speakers that went long and I didn't kick him off the stage. He has a table out front. What are you selling?
T-shirts, the DVD of this message is out there. If you guys want to support us to get to more schools because they can't afford us coming in, you guys can do that too and just donate. That'd be great. We would love your help. Amen?
Worth everything. Thank you guys.